So the next session is a Sandbox, which is essentially the CIO's perspective. Now, we started a CIO conversation with a banking individual and a banking organization, which is very heavily compliant, 6 audits per annum, and that sounds crazy. But we wanted to sort of enrich this discussion by bringing in different voices from different industries, right? And that's what sort of makes this conversation far more real, enriching, and relevant for all of us. So may I please call upon, firstly, Mr. Abhinav Srivastava. He's a CIO for Daimler India Commercial Vehicles. Hi, Abhinav.
Hi, Sanchit. Hello, everyone.
Lovely background. Lovely background. Do you get to drive one of those around, Abhinav?
I just did half an hour ago.
Wonderful. Okay, we'll come back. Thank you, Abhinav. Hare Krishna Raghupati ji, VP IT Lakshmi Machine Works. Good to have you with us, sir.
Hi everyone.
I love the logo. I love it.
Yes. This is Lakshmi Machine Works logo.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Next up, can we have Mr. Srikumar Balochandra, Global Head IT for Suntech Group, please? Thank you for joining us, Srikumar.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Hi.
Wow. I love the blue T-shirts. Great for a Friday evening, much better than a formal shirt that I'm wearing.
We are work from home for 2 years now almost. So it's good that the bottom part is not visible. So
I was actually hoping to do an exercise. Let's all get up. And I realized I can't get up myself. So anyway, so thank you for joining us, Mr. Srikumar. Last but not the least, we've got Mr. Jitendra Kumar, VP and Business Head, Extra by Airtel. Hi, Jitu, how are you?
Hey, hi, Sanchit, and hello, everyone. Nice to be part of this session today.
You know what I'm going to do, Jitu? I'm going to push you around because the nation of CIO wants to know. I'm going to add the Arnab Goswami for the evening. And don't mind if I push you around on a lot of questions, and I like the CIO's voice here, Jitu. Yeah.
Look forward to it.
Excellent. Now let's get started. Abhinav, I'll start with you. Personally, automotive really, really fascinates me. And I think the reason it fascinates me is because the kind of changes that are happening in the industry in auto, especially in the commercial side, are truly fundamental changes, right? Right from how you use industrial IoT to measure the number of turns that the wheel is taking, and sort of, how does that impact your fuel efficiency, your performance, all of that, right? So even before we talk such moonshots changes in automotive, talk to us about the organization. Talk to us about some of the transformation changes that you've done for data center in the last couple of years, Abhinav.
Great. So, Sanjay, thank you for putting me on this spotlight. First, it's absolutely immense. The amount of changes that we have seen in the last 5 years in the automotive industry. I was talking to some of the veterans; they haven't seen in the last 50 years. And just from a technology perspective, just from the compute perspective, if I see the amount of edge computing that is happening currently in the automotive sector is absolutely immense, and that is driving most of our transformation. That's driving most of our decisions. That's driving most of our initiatives with respect to all the transformational initiatives that we are taking across the organizations. You talk about connected vehicles, you talked about e-mobility, you talk about software as a service from an automobile perspective. It's absolutely driving each and everything. We were just joking the other day with my CEO, and he said that next 5 years, we will not be competing with any of the commercial vehicles player, but we will be competing with software industry and software players. And that's the amount of changes that's being driven in the automobile industry right now.
Interesting. Now, I know you were joking with your CEO. I don't remember the last time I did it. Anyway, but moving on, talk to us about the architectural changes you've put through. Last time when I spoke to you, you spoke about this fascinating change that you've put through, wherein you had this entire decentralized architecture where data centers were all across the world, and you've consolidated them, and now what you have is a little more distributed environment where you have a bit of a core DC with some of the edge data center environment, and of course ADR. Now, what was the thought process what were the considerations when you were making these changes, and how does the architecture look now? Give us a sense, please.
Sure, Sanchit. Thank you for asking that question. That's very important, very close to everybody's heart in Daimler. I'll first tell you about the drivers that led to that change. All right, and then I will tell you what that change happened and what was the impact of the change. The three drivers that led to that change, Sanchit, was obviously the cost, because data centers now is not a CIO decision individually; it's become a CIO and a CFO decision, right? The second is obviously the compute at the edge that is happening is driving a lot of decisions and decisions. And that was one of the drivers as to what the amount of compute that is happening at the edge, which requires an edge data center, and we cannot completely rely on a central OVC, right? The third thing is a very interesting topic, which we were just speaking with Rajesh as well, on the sustainability. Daimler India is going to be carbon neutral by 2025.
Wow.
And to drive that change, that is one of the that is one of the drivers to have aligned with that goal, and that is one of the drivers to take data centers or whatever is consuming energy, which can be outside, just move it outside, right? So those are the three primary drivers as to what we did. When we did whatever we did, or rather before that, we had X amount of data centers in each and every country, and we have a presence in almost all the countries of the world. Each own data centers, running its own workload, running about 60% utilization and all this stuff. So we changed that game. What we tried doing it, we brought everybody under one umbrella, all the data centers under one umbrella, and then we started defining and changing the rules of the game within Daimler, saying the three-tier architecture that you talked about, what is going to be at the edge, what is going to be near, what is going to be at the far, and what is going to be central, right? That's the architecture that we drove. And then what we also started looking at the DR setups as well. Okay, so these are the 5 layers. It became like an onion, okay, layer over layer over layer, right? And some of and unlike the banking that I heard from John, we do not have a very strict guidelines or a framework from RBI. We have to define our own security framework as well. So our security layer was put on top of this whole piece. Right?
Interesting. And tell me one thing. Let's say when you do this self-compliance, is it, of course, let's say the more consumer-facing industries, it's GDPR that sort of drives a lot of these decisions. But for you, how do you sort of benchmark, and what do you benchmark to? Because this is the reason why this is important. The compliance and guidelines conversation is important, is because it does impact what goes into your architecture, whether you go to cloud or not. These are decisions that are basis on back of that question, right? Absolutely. So can you give me a sense of what do you as a company benchmark to from a compliance perspective?
So compliance is absolutely written in blood in Daimler. So we cannot move an inch from a compliance perspective. And we have a separate team, which is a homologation team, which looks into the compliance that is drafted by individual. We are into exports as well. So by the individual country compliance, by India compliance, as to what should be the emission norms, how should be the all the vehicle compliance and the engine compliance as such.
Got it.
So that's very separate. And again, to run that compliance, to run that ecosystem, IT and the business was coming together. And what we did was made the compliance also centrally within the data centers.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
My last question to you, and we'll move on in the interest of time. Did that impact the decision to adopt no cloud or some cloud or little cloud, whatever the term, fancy term you want to give it? Or did that impact your decision to adopt cloud?
It did. It did, and that was one of the thought process that was running, and one school of thoughts that were running within Daimler when we were trying to do it. But obviously, like I mentioned in the last time, some bit of workloads which we kept it very deliberately close to our chest. Primarily, the reason was because most of our manufacturing setups are not in the fancy locations like the Bombays and the Punes of the world. So what we they are in the tier 4, tier 3 cities, so they cannot be put on cloud. That is a very deliberate decision that we have to put it on prem, because even if there is a 5 minutes outage in those areas, the entire setup goes.
Got it.
Those are the decisions that were tried.
Perfect. I will pick your brain because you said outages and remote locations that has, I'm sure, a huge network impact on you, and we will sort of come back to that. But in the interest of time and respect for the others, let's talk to Mr. Harikrishna Raghupati-ji. So very interesting company, very interesting portfolio. Talk to us, where does your architecture from a data center stand today? The transformation exercise that you've undertaken, what were the considerations that you had in front of you, and where did that sort of take you from a decision-making perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Sanchit. Definitely. See, now currently the Ashwin Mission Works LMW is definitely going through a major digital transformation journey. So we are now touching upon all the areas of business processes, now trying to revamp, bring in more better applications. So the complete digital transformation journey has started in LMW, and we are in the midst of it. So as you rightly said, on regarding the data center or the data point of view, definitely the ERP applications, which are our mission critical applications running all the data for us, we definitely would like to, we have decided that it has to be on-prem. Because there are a lot of other connected, because we have some of the applications, some of the businesses are running even on the customer data also, which are very important. So to ensure that we have that complete, because another point is the customer related compliance also is there for us. Our customers define certain activities or certain compliances, which we need to show them and ensure that this happens. That we find it difficult in terms of cloud or something where we are not flexible to implement certain things. So ERP and certain mission critical application, we said yes, we'll continue with on-prem, because most of all our factories are in Coimbatore. So that way, in terms of area point of view, definitely we are in the city, so we don't have any problem. So we decided to keep everything, all ERP application on-prem. Meanwhile, what we said is all the other side applications, in terms of CRM, HR, even sort of IoT platforms, we said that we'll move on to cloud-based applications. So not the data center, we'll decide that let's go for cloud-based applications where we don't worry on the data center concept also, like we don't look into data center, all the things. So we pay the cloud app application, we pay on the per user basis, and they manage everything. Third is on the DR part, yes, definitely we said that for the DR, yes, we'll go with the data center on a private cloud. So that is the strategy which we have evolved, because our on-prem PLM solutions and ERP solutions, we decided to keep on because of the volume of data and in terms of complexity, and also for us, main is the compliance. So the three initiatives, this is the area where how we spread across now in terms of data center.
Very interesting. Harikrishna, you mentioned about IoT, and that's a topic that really fascinates me. I'll tell you why, because for industrial companies like yourself, the impact is absolutely very big and very tangible, right? But the fact is IoT is like a double-edged sword. You're saying that you're using IoT on a cloud, but the fact is the amount of data that IoT devices are collecting is humongous, and the amount of cybersecurity issues that can arise thereafter because of them being on public cloud are also very big. I'll give you an example. We are working with one of the world's largest power infrastructure companies, and they have actually used a public cloud-based IoT. And what has happened is that they've opened themselves up to hackers, and their infrastructure can be taken down almost overnight. Now, as an organization, is it just a pilot that you're doing? Because scaling this to a full enterprise-grade secure workload would mean you will need to bring it back to the data center, right?
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of IoT, like I said, there are two types of IoT. One is that customer IoT and factory IoT. So we have two types. One, so the customer IoT, yes, we are not putting on cloud, it's on-premise. It is a factory IoT, our own data with a specific data. We have two in IoT. We have two. One is the IoT hub, which is on the cloud, and IoT edge. It is now 6 on the out-premise. So in IoT age, you have all the complete data. Only the decision-making data which are meant for analysis, and for that is all only sent to the cloud. So we just ensure that we don't transfer any confidential data to the cloud. So this is, as you rightly said, we started this as a pilot. If you say the entire journey now is the LMW is in the pilot phase. So definitely we are also in the process of learning and making corrections for ourselves.
Excellent. And I will come back to you because the use of IoT means the use of 5G. Without that, it's a no-show, right? I will come back to you, but in the interest of time, I'll move on. Mr. Srikumar Balochandra, please. I'd love to hear from you. You come from the IT side of the IT, and which is a very interesting place to be for you. Talk to us about, let's say, when you are, let's say, working with some of your global clients. I'm sure compliance is a huge thing for you as well. But more importantly, what's the journey of the data center transformation that you've taken internally at Suntech, and how has that helped you improve your efficiencies and operations and all of that, please?
Sanchit, and you rightly put it, actually, from an IT services perspective, this thing is probably quite different from what the other panelists were speaking earlier. To me, they handle their data. This is a different perspective. This is a different ballgame. We are handling data which is somebody else's. So more often than not, then you have to be a bit more careful, a bit more cautious. Most of the things may not be really in your hands even. So the client dictates where their data should be. There are geo-centric, guidelines, country-based. They have specific, regulations, what needs to be done, GDPR, several other things needs to be looked at. So we may not be in a position to really, look at, this is what I would want and this is what. So we need to be extremely flexible, in the way that we operate. That whatever way a client would, and maybe it also depends on your workload, whether it is dynamic workload that keeps changing all the time. There are some static workloads. The way it's being processed is batch processing, real-time processing. All this forms the guidelines for. So when you onboard a new, maybe the tier 1 banks, they would have their we do this online. Transaction processing. We are in the transaction processing space. The core banking output that comes in is what is our input, which we process. This could be real-time basis. This could be a batch process, depending on what the banks require. So this keeps changing as well. So so when you look at it, your edge also keeps changing. Sometimes the edge may collapse into the core event. So that's the kind of dynamic workload that we need to handle. So coming back to your question on how did we plan for it, how did we take care of it, kind of thing. So the first and foremost is a public cloud kind of a thing would be the best suited for us in such a kind of a situation. Initially, when you look at it, because you get the flexibility, like, the customer asks, you want Azure, then okay, you go on Azure. You want it on AWS, you put it on AWS. You want on something else, then you can something else. But the problem basically is that you need to dynamically offload, or maybe I need to transition some of the things. If you, for instance, I'll tell you, if you want some high performance computing to be done on a consistent basis as a static workload for over a year, then doesn't make sense to have it on a public cloud, because you will pay through the nose. So when that's kind of a situation comes, then you need to be able to dynamically bring this particular workload from the cloud on to an on-premise kind of thing. It could be your own data center. We are actually building up a tier 3 data center in Trivandrum, a big one. The RFP for this is floated. Airtel is also one of the people we are looking into to build it up for us. This will be ready in about 4-5 months time. That's what we are planning to do. So the idea behind this, that we should have a flexible infrastructure to actually move workloads back and forth from the cloud to the on-premise kind of a thing.
Yeah, it worries me, and I'll tell you, and I love your answer, but I'll tell you why it worries me. We in the technology community make a lift and shift sound so bloody easy, and when it comes to the reality, I see projects getting stalled for eons just because lift and shift and multi-cloud is more in theory and reality. But talk to me about one simple thing, which is, let's say when one of your clients comes to you and speaks to you, and let's say they want to be on AWS. How do you help them do capacity planning? Because that is like a crystal ball gazing exercise, right? Because you virtually can't tell. And typically what we've seen is in typical AWS Azure environments, what ends up happening is while the committed budget is about 150K, at the end of the year, it ends up at $1 million and no one's prepared for it, right? But let's say if that workload was in your control at your data center, there's a far more control that you have on the financials. So as a company, and this is a big problem to be solved for your clients, right? Is that something you plan to do from and solving it right at the architecture layer, maybe better federation with other clouds or easier lift and shift?
Absolutely. Actually, you're spot on what you were mentioning. See, you can't just keep this on, just because the client said this is what is the best. So, you would be paying through your nose if you want to process the whole thing with the client says on the cloud, maybe on AWS or something. You need to subscribe to AWS services. So most of the services that AWS has, you need to subscribe to many of their own cloud services that you need to have. So ideally, you were asking about the architecture part. See, gone are the days when whatever we host, whether it is your own data center or it is on a co-locate the thing with Airtel, Dextra, or whatever, or on the cloud, you need to build our own architecture to make it flexible enough that you were rightly saying that I should be in a position that I will pull back at will from the cloud onto this, and then I can put it back there whenever I would wish to also. For that, what you would actually need is, see, one is, if you are on to the cloud, then you need to have it, you need to be elastic enough, you need to be scalable enough and all this. But there is a limit to what you do in such cases. What you should actually, what you would need is if it is within your own, data center, then the control and the cost factor of it and the flexibility part of it and the security part of it will be far more better than what it is there. So what we are trying to do is everyone would need to do that. You need to have a kind of orchestration layer and an abstraction layer. These two are the most important things. So you cannot, it is not like a bare metal server or something like that. So you need to have your own layer that you need to build up. So we have also trying to build, we have not done it. We are on the process of building it. There are different technologies. You would have heard of VCF, Acropolis from Nutanix. So, VCF is from VMware. You build that, the cloud abstraction layer. On top of it, then you need to again have the DevOps layer, which is again that, the orchestration, which helps me move it back and forth between. So I build up a kind of maybe Tansu or Calm or something like that, which you hear of those technologies. You build it up here, you use the same thing on cloud. So, and I need it here today, then I'll just pull it back into my data center. I work on it, process it. After that, then if I wish to put it back on cloud, I simply move it back on cloud as well. So
it's very, No, it's very fascinating. I don't quite, I love your answer, thank you, but I don't quite subscribe to the mythology of moving back and forth. If you are engaging in such a transformative exercise, you might as well get your head cleared and stop moving in back and forth like a ping pong, simply because that's going to cause so much catastrophe. I have worked in.
It is. Let me interrupt you. It is not back and forth like what you would say that this minute I bring it back. I'm talking about the flexibility that I would need, not necessarily that I would need to move back and forth. See, look. I'll tell you, a bank would definitely, you need to look at the environment. You need to look at the use case. You need to look at the workload. You need to look at whether it is dynamic or static. What is dynamic today, tomorrow it may be a static one. A bank would need a dynamic online processing at one time. Tomorrow it may be a batch processing. So suppose tomorrow he says I need a batch processing, I should be able to move the workload into my system and then do a batch processing, something like that. If it is an online transaction, I will probably do it there. So I am building a flexibility, not necessarily that I'm going back and forth. It's definitely there is no one answer to all this. There is no one solution to all this.
I was just playing Arnab Goswami. Don't worry, Srikumar.
I know. I was also playing along with you. So,
I will come back to you. I have a very super question for you, but we'll go back to Jitendra because he's been waiting for his rightful opportunity. Jitendra, thank you for having patience. 20 minutes on into the conversation. Look, Nextra has come a long way. And as you can imagine, as Nextra is evolving, so are your customers evolving. I think the architecture is so dynamic today. What I'd love for you to tell me in very clear, in a clear manner is that, look, customers have a ton of these questions that, what's the importance of the edge? Where does the edge go? What happens to my data? What happens to parts of my cloud? I'm running a distributed application. There's so many online services. So tell me from a Nextra point of view, what is your preparedness to be able to work with clients who have such dynamic situations at their end that even they can't define their workloads at some stages, right? So talk to us about the investments that you're making at Nextra from a preparedness to serve these dynamic client situations.
Hey, Sanchit, first of all, fascinating hearing Hari, Abhinav, and Srikumar actually. Everyone has a different architecture, right? If you have just paid attention for the last 20 minutes, Abhinav had a completely different view of cloud adoption versus what Hari said. All DC on my on-prem versus DR on on maybe in a cloud or a DR kind of a co-location setup. And then we had Srikumar very fascinatingly saying that a very flexible, agile kind of a structure, architecture, but which gives them a great flexibility in terms of where they want to use a hybrid cloud or an on-prem kind of a setup. But I mean, there itself shows a diversity, and actually that's a facet of customers that we serve, right, Sanchit? You will have BFSI customers, we will have IT, ITS, GICs companies, we'll have manufacturing devices, and obviously we'll have banks and insurance companies, right? There are few critical trends which will be agnostic to industries, right? Whether workloads will move to edge, will network become a very significant part of creating this very scalable, robust, or much more distributed architecture than I mean, the whole story about centralized or decentralized is already a junk story, as per my view. Distribution will be a reality, and hybrid, both in our workforce, our architecture, and our work style will remain, right? So what Nextra is planning to do, Sanchit, is when we said we did announce a 5,000 crore investment about a couple of months back, is to create an infrastructure which these CIO fraternity can use to create and address the future demand, right? So when you talk about edge, we are expanding both the quantity of edge locations in India. We are present in about 65 cities offering our data center services in India. We are going to expand maybe around 5 or 8 additional cities, but also to scale up these edge data centers to meet today's requirement, both from a density point of view, scalability point of view, and even network connectivity point of view. Moving away from the edge, your workloads will get thicker. It will be video heavy, analytics heavy. That means amount of infrastructure and scalability required within the facility, and not to reinvest that money in multiple facilities, will call for this hyperscale data center parks, right? So obviously, from our vantage point of view, the way we invest in our hyperscale park, the way we expand our edge footprint, and seamlessly connect in a seamless fabric across this network edge, the hyperscale edge, and the cloud rampons that we provide, we believe should be able to provide a great robust infrastructure to address any of the requirements that this particular fraternity has from us.
Okay, interesting. I want to talk to you about Edge, and there was a couple of questions on Edge as well. Edge is being spoken as the next holy grail. It's almost as if it's going to make our lives easier, better, quicker, nicer, seamless. I hate the word seamless, because nothing in this life is seamless. I couldn't join this call seamlessly. My AirPods were not working. Nonetheless, going back to it, talk to us about the scalability of the edge, because it's a premise that is oversold by most of your competition. They themselves are struggling from an architecture perspective. Talk to us about your readiness of how truly can you deliver edge at scale.
So, if you talk about edge, right, and being part of a telco legacy, actually, and I candidly want to acknowledge the fact that most of our workloads, most of our network aggregation used to happen across the edge data centers. So it comes very naturally to us to understand how the traffic is getting aggregated, how demands are getting addressed at a particular location, a particular city or a zone, right? So we have created 65 edge, in 65 cities, we have created about 120 edge data centers. How ready we are, I don't think it's a story that's in future. It's already happening as we see. In last maybe 18 months, we have onboarded about 36 to 40 odd edge customers setting up their own edge client, edge cloud, edge CDN, edge gaming platform, thin client-led services, security service at the edge. So this is reality, right? I'll give you an example. Yesterday, we were in a call with one of the GCC providers, and the biggest issue that they were facing was in terms of manpower. The manpower not returning to metros. Their employees are not returning to metros. How do you ensure that they have a very high available network infrastructure and at least been able to work from those top maybe 100 cities in India? One of the fascinating things was, can we host them, create an edge infra at our data centers, with great seamless connectivity, and at least take away the whole pain of moving them back to the cities, right? So it will manifest into various use cases, but I believe the edge is already there, and I think it will only grow as we grow for future. Rajesh alluded to the particular fact of 5G. I also saw a question about 5G, how 5G will change data centers, right? Today,
we are not going to 5G. We're not going to 5G. I'll tell you why. You will marketing. Let's stop there. 5G is a different discussion. We'll hold on to 5G. See, there are more. I'll tell you why we'll hold on to 5G. There are more critical issues at hand. Okay, look, 5G is a bit of a future shot. Okay, because there's another question that's coming here, which is a very relevant. I love that question. It's about contingency plan for Chennai facility from a flooding perspective. Look, I think 5G will happen 2 years from now. Great. But what about the flooding situation? And it's a question that you have answered on the chat, but I would like you to answer it for everybody here, because you know what the fact is, sorry, I've called everybody. It's a Friday evening, so excuse my frankness. But the thing is that, when a vendor comes to us to pitch, say moonshots, we'll do this, we'll do that. Fine. How about basics here? The certainty ought to be in place. How about you ensure the basics are in place? So for a moment, let's talk about basics. Please talk about physical security build. Please talk about contingency plans for Chennai flooding, because these are literally acts of God or man-made or whatever, but issues that matter today.
Absolutely, Sanchit. So 2015, obviously everyone within Chennai and across the country would have realized about the impact of flooding could have on the whole, obviously the common lives of citizens and the IT infrastructure these folks on the session need to run on, right? Even in those critical scenarios, in those force majeure situations, as we call in legal terms. But happy to share that there was zero downtime on even our existing facility that we have. We have been having experience of running a data center in Chennai, in Srivastava region for 10 years now, right? Zero downtime. 3 critical factors. One, it happens by design. Have we designed a facility which can accommodate a 3-meter flood or a 3-feet flood or a 2-meter flood, right? So if a new facility, if you go to there, the plinth itself is about maybe 2 meters higher than the ground level. So that's one part of it. Before selecting a site and shortlisting a site, we went through multiple analysis, technical analysis, or TVR analysis as we call, along with the government, along with SIPCOT to identify what was the flooding history of a particular region, particular plot. So all those were considered before actually designing the civil structure and accordingly baking in those factors, right? The second part you asked about was with respect to physical security. If you understand the SIPCOT Chennai Srivastava area, it is one of the most secured IT-ITS zone designed for an IT-ITS operations from that particular southern part of India. If you actually, it's a very fascinating zone actually out there. Not only what we create, government of Tamil Nadu along with SIPCOT will have their own physical security manning the whole area 24/7. So that's the first layer of security. That's why we chose that particular facility. Then obviously all the standards, 7 layers of security, right from a perimeter to a building, to a hall, to a cage, and to the server level, right? Along with physical checks, you will also have electronic surveillance, you will have an electronic view, and some bit of, right? It's very, again, as I said, really very moonshot to think that it's completely AI ML based. But are we seeing some tinges of AI ML in some part of analytics in security? Yes, we are seeing that, and we have implemented a few of those in the facility.
So I should let my Bitcoin miner friends know that they should go to your facility, right? It's so secure.
Yeah, hosting few.
Okay.
I wouldn't want
to. Oh, you're hosting few. Oh, okay, that can be a red flag. Hold on, don't say more. Okay. In the interest of time, we'll go back. It's going to be a final round of conversation. So I request for the conversation to be kept at maximum 2 minutes per panelist. Thank you. Abhinav is nodding. Abhinav is a great audience. Thank you for being there, Abhinav. So, Abhinav, you spoke about the fact that your manufacturing centers are in tier 3, tier 4 towns. That's a very difficult environment to be in. I'm very fascinated because, I'm working on certain agri-tech startups who are pretty much in the same location. And, we are crippled, I would say, by the network. Talk to us, how do you ensure network uptime? How do you ensure the systems get the data feeds at all given points in time? What's that network architecture? Are you using an SD-WAN? Are you using MPLS? What are you using essentially?
Yeah, completely. And it's a problem not only related to Daimler. It's a global manufacturing problem, right? Be it in India, be it outside. One of the areas that you rightly said, we completely moved on to SD-WAN. Life is much more simpler now. With the software-defined WAN, at least the pipe is a lot more thicker. Pipe is a lot more reliable, and the pipe, surprisingly, we did not have that use case when we first started it, but the latency has come down substantially with that pipe. And with the connectivity with the group, the connectivity with the dealers and all those networks is a far more better setup now. So life is much more simpler from a network perspective.
Right.
Also, one of the areas that we were looking to kind of improve from a network perspective was to move some of our workloads that are non-critical, or some of our network related workloads which are non-critical onto cloud, which kind of reduces some of the network security risks, which kind of reduces the load on the network, and which we tried doing it. It wasn't very successful in the first shot because we designed it wrong, but we got it the second time right, in terms of getting the Mirakees of the world into picture and putting those things onto the cloud. So network, from a network architecture perspective, it will be a hybrid setup for us to bear the fruit, so to say.
Abhinav, I love your candor. Thank you. I think you're one of the very few CIOs who sort of come on record to say we went wrong. Otherwise, it's never happens. So it's music to my ears because I'm on the advisory side. So, getting a CIO to accept they're wrong is a huge issue. But, tell me what went wrong. And I tell you, and the reason I asked this question is because please share your learnings with everyone on the call, because, because we all tend to go wrong in SD-WAN so many times that it becomes quite the pain in the wherever. But, just give us some few learnings that you've had, please.
We were trying to replicate something just because somebody else did it. Maybe it was not fitting it into our ecosystem. That was something that probably we shouldn't have done. And that's a learning for ourselves. We were trying to move all of our network into a Cisco Meraki setup, wherein we did not envisage that the access points, the controllers, the orchestration layer, everything moving on to cloud looks very good on paper. But from a network in a tier 4 city, you need to have control.
That's right.
So that's where we were kind of contemplating. We were trying to walk ahead of time. It did not work, and we kind of came back to basics, and that was a big learning. When this happened.
Thank you, Abhinav. Huge round of applause for you for the candor and the honesty. Thank you very much. So, in the interest of time, we'll move on to Hari Krishna ji. You said IoT. It stuck to me in my notes. I've written IoT, and now let's talk about intersection of 5G. And I stopped Jitendra there because he was, it's the next big thing, right, for everybody. Talk to us about how, as a company, you're thinking about intersection of your data center architecture, readying it for an environment where the throughput, the volume, the velocity of data coming in from your IoT environment is going to be extremely large, because analyzing that throughput of data is not going to be easy. One is that capturing that data on a 5G is not going to be cheap, right? How are you thinking about it? Give us, all of us, a sense, please.
Yes, definitely. So what we in your previous discussions, I highlighted that in terms of IoT, we are going with a two-step approach. One is that the IoT edge network, which we are going to be on-premise, where we are now what we are doing is with the entire IT assets, our complete machine manufacturing assets are all connected through wired network. So we are totally revamping our complete network through a proper WAN network. And also what we are doing is we are complete, as I said, we are going with the ERP on-premise data center. This IoT also is going to become, the edge is going to become on-premise, where the complete data analysis or data storage is going to happen. And in terms of data analysis, where we want to do certain analysis on the maintenance, certain analysis on the machine uptime, so that we are going to shift to on cloud. we are using Azure AWS systems. So we are moving certain areas on the cloud for the IoT hub part. Where you rightly said, the main operational data will be on-premise, where it will be completely, that is what we are planning.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Mr. Krishna. Thank you. I'm getting pings again from the next team. Move on very quickly. We don't have time. So, Mr. Srikumar, very quickly over to you. One of the biggest challenges for a services company like you is attracting talent, keeping talent, retaining talent, especially in the last 2 to 3 quarters, where the salaries of engineers are much more than many CIO friends that I have in the industry. So tell me, as a service provider, aiming to offer orchestration federation across these different architectures, how are you keeping up the game of skills internally? You're on mute.
Yeah, extremely difficult actually. Been in the current scenario, we have actually I should admit that we have lost quite a lot of people, but we will not be able to onboard that fast. So quite a bit of outsourcing has already been done on this. Like as I was also mentioning, that we had burned our fingers quite a bit on being full blown on the public cloud. So we were banking heavily on AWS, again on the skills, like which is again outsourced quite heavily. So the charges on AWS plus the skills that we acquire from them, all this put together made us to look at a change strategy where we should look inwards, like maybe look at some data centers nearby, or our own captive data center which we are trying to build up. Maybe this will excite people to come. Like I cannot just have people looking at cloud and working, then it doesn't excite them quite a bit. So if I have maybe an on-premise data center, or some data center like what Dextra has in Chennai, where he can go every other day, or I have somebody based out of this thing who works out of that data center, go there, plug in a server or whatever, some hands-on there, it will excite people to probably, I need to bring out some kind of thing that will help them see. So I'll cut it short and say that, it's a challenging thing. We need to bring out things that will excite them. So these kind of on-premise things are the things that we need to look at.
The reason I'm smiling is because, just yesterday I was on a call with a CIO. We're talking about 3-tier versus 8CI. And I'm saying, what? Nerds need to get their hands dirty. Cloud is too automated for us. And unless we talk IOPS, unless we talk server storage hardware, I don't think so we can actually have a peaceful night, right? Anyway, moving on, Jitendra, on the closure, I have 3 difficult, easy, whatever questions that you may want to categorize them in. First of all, look, a lot of customers today would be looking at, let's say, a typical ERP migration, ERP modernization journey, because that is a big part of what they're doing. One, what's the readiness for them?
So absolutely, we do offer a complete suite of managed services, and the difference I want to bring is that it's completely in purview of CIO's mind. That you did mention up earlier that it's a huge journey, right? Migration from a captive to DC, or DC to DC, or even to a cloud, right? It will basically mean working as a part of a team of a CIO and actually working with them on a day-to-day basis to make sure that migration goes successfully. Have we created processes, the infrastructure, and the system to address it? Absolutely okay. What we have also done is basically also learn from our experiences, right? Today, Airtel runs Asia's largest private cloud setup, right? We may be running of 15,000 to 20,000 VMs within Airtel itself, right? Today. So with that whole expertise that we have within Airtel, along with Nextra's expertise in managing multiple customers in this journey, I think we could offer potentially a great service for most of the customers who are looking for ERP migration from Nextra and Airtel put together.
Okay, interesting. Now, next question is from Kanoni. I know you've answered it one-on-one, but it's a great question. We need to sort of do justice on a public forum. Does Nextra maintain the DR for the whole data center, irrespective of customer, in any other seismic zone, where in case of any calamities, the customer Nextra can connect to the DR setup?
Absolutely, Sanchit. We run about 11 large data centers and 120 data centers. So you have right from zone 4 seismic zone in Noida to a zone 3 in Chennai versus zone 2 in Pune and Hyderabad. So we have data centers in all the cities. Will they act as a backup DC-DR for either of the location that you choose? Yes, of course we do that. And we not only do that, we also integrate it in a very seamless manner, both your DC and DR and the near DR. I think John did refer to the near DR and the DC and the DR in a different city. Very fascinating. It's part of the same journey and the same thought process, actually.
I think we need to tell Zoom to have an AI that sort of views seamless as a word each time anyone utters it on a conference like this. Just a joke. Okay, last question for the day. You, by your own accord, accepted and sort of stated that Airtel is a legacy company with a company that comes from a telecom background, not necessarily a company that is a born in the cloud startup, yada yada yada, but talk to me about and give confidence not just to me but to our CIOs here as to the efforts on changing the culture, the approach at Nextra and Airtel to work with some of the very complicated architecture conversations, the efforts to internally change as you help your customers change.
Three things, Sanchit. It's one, we will never experiment our customers, right? If we have not done internally, we will never claim that we have done this. Can we learn with experience and then actually candidly and transparently share with our customers? These are the learnings. These are the mistakes that we have done, right? And this is what we will not do if you plan and choose to work with this. I think across maybe last 2 years, we would have worked about 15 to 18 customers in the migration. Even during the pandemic downtime, the amount of planning that we have done for a migration for a customer may be more detailed than what we have done for an internal migration for our own captive requirements, right? I remember a great power company in India today planned to move their whole DC and DR in a lockdown, the first lockdown, not even second lockdown, from their captive DC because they're not able to address it, they couldn't access it. There was issues in terms of managing it. They planned with us. We worked in lockdown 24/7 with them to ensure that they migrate the DC on time and the DR on time. Obviously, it was sequenced. It was done in a manner that it doesn't create any friction as least as possible. But I think, so that gives us confidence, and maybe we should give confidence to our customers and our fraternity out here that we do take a lot of care, right? We run about 480 million customers. We run the databases today. Every minute loss is a loss of a revenue, a loss of an airtime actually on the market. So that's a criticality we bring in when we bring in with our experience to our customers too.
Wonderful. That sort of sums up the discussion very well. Thank you, gents, for a wonderful discussion. This has been a very enriching conversation. Thank you, Abhinav, Srikumarji, Harikrishnaji, and Jitendra for let's have a round of applause for them.